By the way, good news.
Good news.
I have created an essential yacht rock playlist. It's essential only.
Does it follow the appropriate
Yeah,
ranks highly?
Yeah, ranks. So a number of these are quite highly ranked.
The crowning moment of my week was when I had an organic opportunity to...
Was that last week?
Last week. Someone's like,
PB?
what's yacht rock? And I'm like, I've got this. Michael, step aside. I've got this. And then you asked me to... She's like, well, what's an example? I'm like, I've got this even more. I just went with what's in my heart. It was a Doobie Brothers song.
What a fool believes.
And Michael's face.
100
I'm
out
like,
of
this
100.
is the best.
Yeah.
This is the best moment ever.
Yeah. Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm your host, Michael, a child and adolescent occupational therapist. And with me today is Eleanor.
I'm also a child and adolescent occupational therapist.
And as normal, we will be going through questions in a Q&A format. We'll take in your questions, throw in some of our own, hopefully find the fun in learning how we can support the young people in our lives. If you have any questions you'd like, please send them through to podcast@OTFC Group on Instagram. Otherwise, podcast@otfcgroup.au is the email address as well. So 17th to the 23rd of March is Neurodiversity Week. And we thought that we would have a little bit of a focus on neurodiversity. And through the month of March, we've got a few episodes. We've got an interview with one of our clinicians, which we're really excited about having. We've also got a few episodes just related to, I guess, all things neurodiversity, neurodivergence, and hopefully for those that maybe aren't as familiar with particular terms or have a bit to provide a bit more understanding.
And I guess like the reason we're looking to explore this is that, you know, I guess in the work that we do, we're very fortunate to be able to work alongside families, young people with neurodivergent backgrounds. And so it's perhaps just sharing our experience with working alongside some of these families and how we can hopefully support others who might be navigating similar things, similar journeys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how we can embrace that more holistically.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing. And I think it's always a theme with things like Neurodiversity Week is understanding all brains are different, and that being able to ensure that our world, our society is reflective of that, and that everybody has unique traits and things that they can bring to the world, and there's a greater understanding of different diagnoses now, but doesn't mean that things are still equal for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's just a constant opportunity to advocate and educate and support everybody to live their best life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get into that, I can't ignore our regular segments.
Of course.
So we might start with our activity of the week.
Therapy, activity of the week.
What's yours?
Mine was on Monday. I had a client of mine who is very, very niche, but he's quite familiar with how to play cards, but Italian cards. So we have an Italian card deck here. And
What's how you do your card readings? Isn't that like your future readings? Oh, it's a different set. Sorry.
It's not card
My
reading.
mistake.
No. Different set
My
of cards.
mistake.
We're not going to get into my card reading. But the game, there's a particular type of card game. It's like an addition game, an Italian card game, and he knows how to play it. I know how to play it. So the game was, let's play that game. So each hand, whoever wins has to set someone else a challenge.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge game. So we're playing the game of cards, but what I was trying to get him to do was actually set up a challenge, look at his hands of cards and go, how hard can I make this challenge? So if I have a good set of, if I think I've got a good hand and I think I'm going to win this hand here, then I'm going to make it more challenging. If I don't think I've got a very good hand, then I'm going to reduce the challenge because potentially I have to go and do that challenge.
Did you put your challenges on the table like a bet beforehand?
I sort of.
Or did you write them down?
Yeah, we wrote them down. We had
Yeah.
So it was no betting involved, and I'm not for that, but it was kind of we had a bit of an idea, and then anyway, so there were a variety of challenges throughout the space. So it was balancing, there was endurance, there was strength. And so it was a fun way of engaging him in some movement, but using the cards as a way to initiate that.
Yeah.
And add in, I guess, a level of randomization. Now, as it happens, I did the majority of challenges because he had some fantastic cards.
Yeah.
But he actually had to come up with a whole bunch of really challenging activities, which he did really well. And that was one of his goals, is to develop ideas, and comes back to some of that sort of executive functioning and planning. So yeah, that was mine.
That's so good. I think mine this week, a really fun one that I had with one of my friends, who our biggest goals are around like these vestibular-based skills, which was around like bilateral coordination, postural control, bit of balance. And we were doing this parkour run, I guess, where we had different pieces of equipment set up. They had to get from one side to the other, going over these pieces of equipment. And so he'd often do it by like placing his hands on and then tucking his legs up and over. We were saying it was like an action movie, you know, like dodging through all this different stuff. He had something on the end that he was very motivated to collect and then bring back to the start. And then to try and get this process, I guess, a little bit more automatic in how he was switching on these different postural muscles, we added in that he, you know, had balls that he had to dodge as he was moving through. So he's got like the body awareness piece, he's monitoring the visual motor skills, but I guess trying to encourage his body to be less focused on the tucking of his legs, the switching on of the muscles, and have that be a bit more automatic while he's trying to focus on other things. And we end up bringing a peer in, so we would like take it in turns to be either the one moving through the course or the one throwing the balls. And the person that was throwing was balancing on a Bocey ball on the ground. So everyone's working really hard, but it was, you know, we were seeing like the Mission Impossible theme as they were doing it. So
Did they even know what Mission Impossible was?
I think funnily enough, I don't think they did.
That's okay.
But they were into it, and then they were singing it as they were going through as well. It was really fun.
Awesome.
Very, very, very active, but an activity that I think from the outside looks like everyone's just having a good time, but was very specifically set up to work on their key goal areas that we'd identified. So
it's a good sign.
Good
sign of ASI there.
Yeah.
Looks like fun, but it's working on goals.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, regulation strategy of the week.
Reg strat.
Regulation strategy of the week.
For those that don't know, Eli has to sing the song every time we go through this. So thank you, Eli, for doing a rendition.
We're looking for an immersive experience for us. So
Absolutely.
we're hearing it in real time too. Okay, regulation strategy of the week. I actually was chatting with one of our OTs who's going to come on in a future episode and chat a little bit about her experience, which is really cool, very exciting. But she's just talking about her need to move. And I think, once again, these are things that potentially as adults we just intrinsically look to access. And she was just talking about how important movement is for her, and doing a few jumps on the trampoline and a few handstands on the equipment can be so regulating for her in and around sessions. And so I suppose mine's less around a strategy and more a concept, where it's just, especially as adults, how we can move and get that input in sneaky little ways with things that we have access to in our environment. You know, we're in a space that, quite fortunately, if someone feels like having a jump on the trampoline before sitting down for a long time, they can do that. But how do we do that in other ways if that work looks a little bit different?
Yeah, and for students at school, how do they get input when they need it? And obviously adults that need movement probably were kids that needed movement as well. So
definitely.
How do we provide that in less dynamic spaces?
Yeah, probably like a walk around the block. You know, that's something that I like to do now, but that's, I suppose, more of like a brain break to reset, whereas someone else who maybe needs more intensive opportunities, perhaps we need to intensify that a little bit more for them.
I've actually got two. One, noise cancelling headphones. Don't need to say more than that. When I put them on,
so good.
Shut the world out.
Yeah.
And listen to music as well sometimes as well. There's various playlists I'm listening to at the moment. But the other one is ice. It's been pretty hot.
Okay.
So ice blocks. So not ice blocks, flavoured ice blocks, but just like blocks of ice, and just having a block of ice in the mouth. And then my son was really big on just having some crunchy ice, and it's because it's been so hot, just to bring that heat down.
Yeah.
Temperature down. I know lots of our clients can be really susceptible to changes in temperature, and heat being a real trigger for dysregulation. And so sometimes,
or perhaps not even necessarily just like if it's more of that muted experience, might not be able to register until it's quite intense for them.
Correct. And sometimes a block of ice or something really cool can just bring that temperature down and at least draw focus away from other things. And so, ice is a really good one in the heat. Not a amazing one, but just a really incidental, easy to use. If you're getting a bit hot and you just want to take it down a notch, grab some ice, stick it in the mouth, see what happens.
Yeah, I love I think, like you said, that really crunchy aspect for the oral motor component, in addition to that intense cold. I think there's probably a few things from a sensory perspective that's ticking off, which is cool.
Yeah, very much so. All right. Well, I thought what we might do to start off this, I guess, series of neurodiversity is to just break down a little bit of the definitions, probably the key terms that people hear.
Yeah.
And you know, there are other podcasts and there's websites and things you can find this information about, but just to put it in a PD in your pocket, if you will, just a really quick way to provide a bit of definitions just broken down a bit so people can understand it. So the key terms that people may hear: neurodiversity.
Yep.
Neurodivergence, and then probably neuronormative or neurotypical or something else that people do hear. Any other ones that you...
Yes, and I suppose that differentiation around neurodiversity and neurodiverse would probably be another one.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I think hopefully in explaining giving a brief idea of the different definitions will help then be able to tease those two out.
Yeah. And can I just say too, I guess as part of this conversation, you know, a little bit like we mentioned as we were referencing this topic generally, you know, we are certainly talking on this as no experts in this. And when it comes to, it's about chatting with the people in your life about how they would like these concepts referenced or how they describe that for themselves. And with the idea that, of course, every person is unique within this. And the intent here is really just to perhaps provide a little bit of guidance around that, and with terminology that we might be hearing more of in these circles, about how we can really be neuroaffirming, neuroembracing, and be able to have conversations in a way that's really meaningful and supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some people out there that provide really clear differentiation between some of these things and put into real world examples and are really strong advocates. Like there's, you know, Sunny Jane Wise.
Yeah,
they're
just
a fantastic.
Thinking as well. Yeah.
So they're fantastic and a really strong advocate of neurodiversity. And, you know, if you're on any sort of social media, you see that they will absolutely get in a really robust discussion in a really safe but really instructive and informative way. And it's just about trying to provide as much information for everyone out there to make sure that things are done, you know, set in the right way and safely and that nobody's experience is not validated.
Absolutely.
So that's just one example. But if we start with neurodiversity, so neurodiversity, I guess if you want to put it simply, is kind of understanding that the whole spectrum of brains are different. Everyone has different brains and neurodivergent, neurotypical people, that every brain is different.
Yeah, and we all contribute to the tapestry of that's all brains that add that colour and all those amazing things into the world we live in. And
some people might be aware, some people might not, but it was actually coined by an Australian called Judy Singer. I think she's a sociologist and had really quite outspoken in that field and coined the term. That is where that sort of started from. And I guess the one thing that I would say here is when we're talking about things like neurodiversity and neurodivergent people or neurotypical, it's sort of more of a sociological or as opposed to a medical model of viewing things. And I think that's sometimes where it can get a bit confusing for people who are very geared towards understanding things from a diagnostic medical lens.
But it's how we've approached things for so long as well. I think with the tools that we've had available and how we've looked to understand that. And I think the world and our understanding has shifted so much since those initial points. So you're exactly right in moving more to this model, which can be really hard when a lot of the things that we still have in place to understand this fit very much against diagnostic criteria and medical models and also frameworks that have been written quite some time ago. And of course, there's been reviews within that. But I think once again, as our understanding continues to broaden and deepen, that's just waiting for some of those other things to catch up a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the reason that some of these social models of disability have come into prominence more so is awareness, again, of that everyone is different, every brain is different, and that we should be celebrating those differences. And that real neuroaffirming approach is so important because, as I said at the start, everybody's experience is their own and should be validated. And obviously, if someone does have a diagnosis and it is a disability, that they are supported in the ways that best suit them and that we understand their strengths and challenges in the best ways. So I guess neurodiversity, as I said, that's kind of, they talk about the umbrella. Yeah. And there's lots of things that fit in that umbrella. As I said, I think Sunny Jane Wise, if you go to their Instagram, has some fantastic images and some really, really nice discussions.
And LinkedIn too is like a bit of a professional model. They're excellent in those discussions.
And actually might plug that I think they're going to be speaking at the Child Adolescent Mental Health Conference.
Oh, amazing.
The Gold Coast in March coming up. So anybody that's wanting to go to that.
They were a keynote speaker as part of the Yellow Ladybug Conference last year, which was really incredible. Yeah, I think they're doing amazing work.
South Australian. So always
very
plug
cool.
someone from our home state as well. So that's a bit of what neurodiversity looks like. Neurodivergent.
Yes.
With a T, neurodivergent. I guess that understanding of that a brain that I guess works or functions differently to what is considered neurologically neurotypical or norm or neuronormative, and I'm doing quotation marks with my fingers there, and I guess that helps differentiate the difference between maybe a neurodivergent brain and a neurotypical and neuronormative brain. Yeah. And
what we're, I guess, looking at as part of this is potentially those neurodevelopmental differences in terms of for an autistic person, ADHD, intellectual differences and specific learning differences as well. I think the mental health realm falls under that, which is, very important. So whilst we all contribute to that neurodiversity, there's a differentiation with a neurodivergent person.
Yes.
And also how that looks and feels for them, and the strengths, the wonderful things, those things that are very unique about their brain, and then how that manifests for them and how they undertake things in their day.
And I know in terms of the origins of this, sometimes there has been some debate about the origin of the term neurodivergent. But if you go through and have a look at the people that are speaking about neurodiversity and neurodivergence, that there's a pretty consistent suggestion of a person called Cassian Asamasu, who is an autistic activist who sort of coined the term and helped to describe those individuals who diverge from the typical. And that's where that neurodivergent term has come from. So has written quite widely on that. So certainly someone to look out for if you want to look more into that. And I guess if we go back to that social model of disability, that neurodivergent brain that works differently from what the societal norm in inverted commas brain would look like. So I guess that's a bit of a brief on that.
Yeah.
And then finally, neurotypical. There are people out there who I would say do have neurotypical brains and that I guess would be more aligning with what would be society would consider as a typical cognition or behavior or something along those, trying to find other ways of saying that. But
I get it.
You know what I mean? And
I always wonder where this terminology might grow to as this movement continues.
Yeah.
I think some of the phrasing around that and just making sure that that's feeling inclusive and neuroaffirming. I wonder if that will change over time or whether that's something that we're all feeling really comfortable in using.
And I guess in terms of neurodiversity itself, like it sits under that umbrella as well. So, if we think of all brains are different, there's a brain that people would consider would be neurotypical or normative in the way it functions. And then there's, a neurodivergent brain as well. But yes, you're right. I think the more we understand about this, the more there might be different terminology, and like any sort of social science, that stuff or any science really, it refines over time and terminology refines over time.
Yeah. And even I was chatting with a gorgeous young person that I work with the other day, where I guess this differentiation is a really important topic conversation at the moment, because we're working really hard, not too dissimilar to what we were saying before, to work backwards from where we're standing with a lot of things at the moment in terms of school structure and workplace expectations and all of that kind of thing, where there's been kind of one way or a preferred way of doing things for some time, and recognizing that so many brains aren't wired to flourish in that kind of setup. And the reason that differentiation is important so that we can start to shift the way that we do things to be more inclusive and encompass the needs of a broader range of people. I guess it's just all these steps on a path forward to creating a space that can celebrate every person for the incredible individual that they are.
Yeah. And the more we know, the more we're able to realize the importance of the diversity of people in our world and see each other's differences as strengths and support that. And where there are challenges, understand those difficulties and the differences that someone might have, and provide the support that's required and the accommodations that are needed to ensure that they can be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I think there's still a long way to go, but
wanting people to be able to work towards being able to be, like we always say, just their most authentic self, where they can show up as the people that they want to, embracing all the things that they need, sharing what they need to as part of that, and for people around them to get it or get curious in a way that's supportive, or be asking what they can do to support as part of that. Like, how can we build each other up with those varying needs? There's
heaps of information out there now, and a very, very highly recommended podcast that I'll just do a plug for is the Neurodiversity podcast. Emily Kirchmaris interviews a whole range of people.
Yeah, amazing.
And her ability to be able to provide a really robust discussion and really strongly advocate for awareness of neurodiversity, and in particular for neurodivergent people, is excellent. So that's one that, if you're listening to this and you want to find a bit more about it, go straight to that.
Yeah, amazing. Yep.
Excellent stuff on there. So yeah, I think that kind of covers the start of what we wanted to talk about over the next few episodes.
Yep.
And hopefully give our listeners a bit of a preamble, the preface to our story about neurodiversity over the next month.
Yeah.
And we, as we said at the top of the show, we will have an interview with one of our OTs who's neurodivergent. We will go through a little bit more about other areas, ADHD, autism, and talk a bit more about some of these components in more detail, and hopefully continue to educate and provide something interesting for our listeners.
I think importantly, having that focus around, as occupational therapists, a huge part of what we do is, what are the barriers to people being able to do the things that they need in their day, and how can we bring some of those barriers down or put things in place to support? And, I think what we're hoping to do is have a big focus on the OT lens within that, and what a young person might be managing across their day, and what we can be doing to assist within that.
All right. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send those through to podcast@otfcgroup.au. That's the email. Otherwise, OTFC Group on Instagram.
Really looking forward to getting into this, though, over the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exciting.
All right. Well, thanks all, and a quick shout out to Fletcher. And
Mr. Negotiator.
Hope he's doing well, and hope he, like all our other neurodivergent young people, might listen to this and take something away from it and share their own lived experience at some stage as well.
Yeah. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
Thanks.